Imagine a world where being smart feels less like a blessing and more like a curse, where intelligence becomes a prison rather than a power. This is the paradox that Arthur Schopenhauer, the famously dark German philosopher, reveals in his hidden secret, one that has been misunderstood, overlooked, or even feared for centuries. Schopenhauer believed that the very thing we idolize, our intellect, can become the source of our deepest suffering and dissatisfaction. Intelligence opens doors to knowledge and understanding, yes, but it also forces us to confront the harshest truths about life, existence, and ourselves. It sharpens our awareness to such an extent that ignorance, often considered a flaw, can sometimes be a kind of protection from the crushing weight of reality. The more you think, the more you realize the futility of many human pursuits, the relentless pain that lurks beneath pleasure and the fleeting nature of happiness. Unlike the popular notion that smart people have it easier or better in life, Schopenhauer argues that intelligence magnifies our suffering. Why? Because it heightens our sensitivity to disappointment, our awareness of the endless desires that can never be fully satisfied, and our insight into the tragic absurdity of existence. It is this heightened awareness that makes being smart a double-edged sword, capable of cutting deeper wounds than ignorance ever could. In fact, Schopenhauer's philosophy suggests that intelligence binds us to a painful clarity about the world's impermanence and cruelty. We see through illusions that comfort the masses. We can't turn off our minds or pretend things are better than they are. This is his hidden secret, the unbearable burden that comes with intellect. It's a secret that makes you question whether you truly want to be smart, or whether the bliss of not knowing might be a better fate. In the chapters to come, we will dive into why Schopenhauer believed intelligence could be the root of existential torment, how it shapes our relationships, desires, and sense of self, and what his radical solution might be to escape this trap. Prepare yourself to challenge everything you thought about intelligence and the pursuit of knowledge, because after hearing Schopenhauer's hidden secret, you might never want to be smart again. Schopenhauer saw intelligence not as a straightforward blessing, but as the root of profound existential anguish. According to him, the more intelligent a person is, the more deeply they suffer, because they understand life's fundamental nature in ways others do not. Intelligence forces us to confront the unbearable reality that life is full of endless desires that can never be truly fulfilled. Unlike animals or less aware humans who can be content with simple pleasures or distractions, the intelligent mind sees through superficial happiness to the deeper emptiness beneath. This creates a painful tension between what we want and what we can actually have. Schopenhauer famously described life as will, a blind, insatiable force driving all living beings to strive and desire. But no matter how much we achieve or acquire, the will is never satisfied. Intelligence sharpens this awareness of the will's endless demands and the futility of chasing after permanent happiness. It reveals that pleasure is only the temporary cessation of pain, and soon after satisfaction, new desires arise, perpetuating a cycle of suffering. This cycle is invisible to those who do not think deeply, but for the intelligent, it becomes a source of constant frustration and despair. Moreover, intelligence also brings with it a heightened sensitivity to the suffering of others and the cruelty of the world. While ignorance can shield one from seeing pain or injustice, the intelligent mind cannot turn away. It sees the suffering inherent in existence, the fragility of life, and the inevitability of death. This creates not only personal suffering, but also empathy that can feel like a heavy burden. Schopenhauer's insight reveals that intelligence alienates us from the easy illusions that help most people get by, leaving us exposed to harsh truths. This is why Schopenhauer's secret is so dark. Intelligence makes us prisoners of knowledge and awareness, caught between desire and dissatisfaction, empathy and loneliness, hope and despair. Yet he did not leave us without a way forward. In later chapters, we will explore how Schopenhauer proposes to respond to this paradox, how to find peace despite the curse of intelligence, and why his solution might be as surprising as the problem itself. But for now, recognize that intelligence, far from being simply a gift, can also be a source of deep, inescapable suffering. Schopenhauer's philosophy reveals a paradox that has confounded thinkers for centuries. Knowledge and happiness often stand in direct opposition. The more we know, the more we realize how limited and painful existence truly is. Unlike conventional wisdom that equates knowledge with power and fulfillment, Schopenhauer argues that true knowledge brings a kind of clarity that can shatter illusions and leave us feeling vulnerable. Intelligence and deep understanding illuminate life's harsh realities, the inevitability of suffering, the meaninglessness of many pursuits, and the isolation of conscious existence. This awareness strips away comforting myths and reveals the raw nature of the human condition. The paradox is that the less you know, the easier it is to live happily, because ignorance shields you from painful truths. Meanwhile, the more you know, the more you wrestle with despair and existential dread. Schopenhauer goes further to suggest that happiness is more about ignorance and distraction than about genuine understanding. The pursuit of knowledge, especially into the nature of existence, forces us to confront questions that have no easy answers and no lasting consolation. This confrontation breeds anxiety and dissatisfaction, making happiness elusive. Moreover, Schopenhauer highlights how this paradox shapes human behavior and social dynamics. Those who are less aware often enjoy simpler pleasures and social acceptance, while the intelligent feel alienated and disconnected. They struggle to find meaning in a world that often seems absurd and indifferent to their suffering. This alienation can lead to loneliness, cynicism, or a deep sense of melancholy. Yet, Schopenhauer does not condemn intelligence outright. Instead, he challenges us to rethink our assumptions about what it means to live well. He invites us to question the value we place on conventional success and happiness, and to explore alternative ways of being that might offer relief from the suffering intelligence reveals. In this chapter, we see that knowledge is a double-edged sword, capable of enriching life, but also deepening despair. Schopenhauer's hidden secret begins to unfold here, that the very faculty we celebrate as our greatest strength may also be the source of our greatest suffering. Understanding this paradox is the first step toward grappling with the dark truth about intelligence, and it forces us to reconsider how we pursue meaning and peace in a world that offers neither easily. At the core of Schopenhauer's philosophy lies a profound insight. The true source of human suffering is not external circumstances or intellectual despair, but a blind, insatiable force he calls the will. This will is an irrational, ceaseless drive that underpins all life and consciousness. Unlike the rational mind, which thinks and analyzes, the will is raw, unconscious, and relentless. It manifests as desires, cravings, and impulses that push us to strive endlessly for satisfaction, yet never grant lasting peace. Schopenhauer argues that our entire existence is governed by this will, which traps us in an eternal cycle of wanting and dissatisfaction. This explains why knowledge alone, even when deeply understood, cannot free us from suffering. The will operates beneath reason and awareness, compelling us to act, desire, and suffer, regardless of our intellectual insights. The will's nature is such that it never rests or finds fulfillment. Once one desire is fulfilled, another quickly arises, perpetuating a state of constant unrest and frustration. This endless striving is the root of misery, because it creates an insatiable hunger that cannot be appeased. Schopenhauer's notion of the will challenges the common belief that reason or willpower can master our desires. Instead, he suggests that the will is autonomous and irrational, often overpowering conscious control. This means that intelligence and self-awareness, while valuable, are ultimately powerless to quiet the will's demands. In fact, heightened intelligence might even amplify suffering, because it makes us more acutely aware of the will's futility and the painful cycle we cannot escape. However, Schopenhauer also offers a glimpse of hope. He believes that through certain paths, such as aesthetic contemplation, compassion, and asceticism, by engaging with art or acts of selflessness, we detach from our cravings and find brief relief from suffering. Yet this relief is temporary, not a permanent liberation. Understanding the will is crucial because it reveals the hidden dynamics driving human behavior and pain. It explains why intelligence alone cannot solve the human condition, and why being smart sometimes feels like a curse. This chapter uncovers the secret mechanism behind our torment, showing that beneath every thought and feeling lies an irrational force steering our fate. Schopenhauer's will teaches us that to confront suffering, we must look beyond intellect to the deeper, more primal currents of life itself. Schopenhauer reveals a cruel irony. The smarter we become, the more we recognize how little control we truly have over life and our own desires. Intelligence sharpens our perception of reality, allowing us to see the vast web of causes and effects, the fragility of happiness and the inevitability of suffering. This clarity, rather than empowering us, often leads to a deep sense of helplessness. We come to understand that our will, the blind force driving our desires, operates independently of our conscious intentions. No matter how clever or strategic we are, we cannot fully master or escape this fundamental compulsion. This realization shatters the illusion of control that many cling to as a source of comfort. Instead of feeling empowered by our intellect, we confront the limits of our agency, which can be a painful awakening. Schopenhauer's philosophy teaches that intelligence exposes the futility of chasing lasting satisfaction through worldly achievements or material gain. The more we comprehend this, the more we see how transient and fragile success and happiness truly are, and how they are always threatened by forces beyond our command. Thus, intelligence becomes a double-edged sword. It opens our eyes to truth, but also intensifies our suffering by highlighting our vulnerability. Despite this grim portrait of human existence, Schopenhauer offers a moral insight rooted in the recognition of shared suffering, compassion. Because the will is universal, binding all beings in the same cycle of desire and pain, the suffering of others is fundamentally our own. This awareness creates a powerful ethical foundation that transcends selfishness and ego. Compassion, for Schopenhauer, is the only genuine moral impulse because it arises from the direct perception of another's pain as interconnected with our own. This deep empathy breaks the isolating barrier of individual will and allows us to act with kindness and solidarity. Compassion does not promise to end suffering entirely, but transforms how we relate to it and to others. It softens the harshness of the will's demands by fostering understanding and connection. In a world ruled by insatiable desire, compassion becomes a rare but profound refuge, a way to alleviate suffering by sharing it and supporting others in their struggles. Schopenhauer's emphasis on compassion challenges the idea that intelligence alone is the path to a good life, pointing instead to empathy and humility as essential virtues. Schopenhauer also points to the arts as a unique way to temporarily transcend the will's relentless demands. When immersed in music, painting, poetry, or other forms of aesthetic experience, our minds can detach from personal desires and the cycle of striving. In these moments, we become pure, disinterested observers, appreciating beauty without craving or aversion. This state of contemplation offers a rare respite from the will's grip, allowing us to experience a kind of peaceful suspension of suffering. Art becomes a mirror reflecting the essence of existence without the distortions of desire. It provides a glimpse of a higher reality where the endless wants of the will are silenced, if only briefly. Schopenhauer elevates art to a spiritual function, a way to access something beyond the painful, restless world shaped by the will. However, like compassion, this escape is temporary. Once the aesthetic experience ends, the will's cycle resumes. Still, Schopenhauer insists that these moments are vital for sustaining hope and providing meaning within a fundamentally tragic existence. Schopenhauer's most radical teaching is that true liberation from suffering comes not through fulfilling desires, but through denying the will itself. This means rejecting the endless cycle of craving, ambition, and attachment that drives human life. According to him, the will is a blind, insatiable force that fuels suffering and disappointment. So the only way to escape its torment is through asceticism, a conscious turning away from worldly pleasures and desires. This denial is not a denial of life in the common sense, but a profound spiritual discipline that quiets the restless striving inside us. Schopenhauer admired certain religious traditions, especially Buddhism, for understanding this truth and promoting renunciation as a path to peace. To say no to the will is to stop feeding the cycle of want and suffering, and to cultivate detachment and calm. This is an extremely difficult path because it goes against our nature and social conditioning. But for Schopenhauer, it is the only authentic way to end suffering, surpassing mere intellectual understanding or ethical compassion. The denial of the will leads to a state of resignation, not despair, but a serene acceptance of life's fundamental emptiness and a freedom from its illusions. This teaching explains why Schopenhauer's philosophy, though dark, has a hopeful spiritual core. Building on his critique of intelligence, Schopenhauer warns that overthinking and excessive intellectualization can trap us in a mental prison. When the mind endlessly analyzes desires, fears, and life's contradictions, it can spiral into anxiety, despair, and paralysis. Instead of freeing us, this kind of thinking magnifies suffering by magnifying awareness of the will's relentless demands. Schopenhauer believed that many people suffer because they are too conscious of life's painful truths, unable to forget or distract themselves. This mental burden can lead to melancholy and alienation, where intelligence no longer serves as a tool for progress, but becomes a source of anguish. The philosopher suggests that wisdom is not just about knowing more, but about knowing when to stop, cultivating a kind of practical silence and acceptance. This balance between insight and peace is rare and difficult. Schopenhauer's message is a warning to those who seek refuge solely in intellect, urging them to integrate compassion, aesthetic experience, and will denial to avoid becoming prisoners of their own minds. Schopenhauer's hidden secret is the paradox that the highest intelligence leads not to triumph or happiness but to profound disillusionment and a longing to escape the burdens of thought and desire. The more we understand the will's power and the nature of suffering, the less appealing it becomes to chase knowledge for its own sake. This insight forces us to rethink what it means to be smart. True wisdom, Schopenhauer implies, is not about accumulating facts or intellectual achievements, but about learning to live with the will's demands through compassion, art, denial, and acceptance. In this way, being smart in the conventional sense is almost a curse because it reveals harsh realities that others might overlook. Yet this painful clarity can also be the first step toward genuine freedom. The secret is that the desire to be smart must be tempered by the willingness to embrace humility, to surrender the ego's craving, and to find peace beyond the intellect. Schopenhauer challenges us to confront the uncomfortable truth that the pursuit of intelligence alone is not enough. And sometimes, after seeing the world as it truly is, we will never want to be smart again.